Hello and welcome to the Cultivating Calmness Podcast. Today's topic will be on the theme of a day in the life of a griever. My name is Kaela Vance and I will be your host today. So if you aren't aware, October, along with probably most months of the year, is full of awareness for different topics. So October happens to be one that has hit pretty hard, I guess, in the mental health community. And today I wanted to make sure not to pass up that it is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. I know we are here at the end of the month, so the whole month has passed, and I have not specifically addressed this in a podcast episode, and I wanted to be sure to do that today. And I didn't want to just talk to you about the facts and statistics related to pregnancy and infant loss, because they are out there. I'll give a little bit of those today, but I wanted to take a little bit of a different perspective, and I wanted to offer you and talk about just what grieving may look like for somebody who has recently or even ever had the death or experienced the death of a child, whether that was in utero due to a miscarriage or stillbirth, or after birth within the first year or a couple years of life. Any death of any child can be very traumatic and a very negative experience for anybody involved, not just the mother or the person carrying the child, but for those people around them. So I want to give that perspective today, and just to help you maybe see what that may be like. So many of you maybe can honestly say that you have grieved the loss of somebody close to you, but some of you may honestly be able to say you haven't, and that's okay either way. But for those of you who have maybe never really experienced the death of somebody that you know and care about, this may be a really good opportunity for you to experience and think about what it is that somebody may go through. Now today, I'm just going to focus on the loss or death of a child. And for today's example, as when I get into that here in a few minutes, it's going to be I'm going to say a child who has, we'll say maybe a year to two old. Okay. So the experience that somebody may have if they have had a miscarriage, for example, will be different than somebody who has lived with their child for months or years. But the concept will still be the same. So just to keep that in the back of your mind. So the other day I was actually having a conversation with my brother, and he brought up a really good point that, as myself and my siblings as children who lost their mother at a young age, we didn't really know anybody in our circles who had lost a parent but us. So we were the only ones that we knew of who had lost a parent for anything. I think I had been in school for several years before somebody else in our school also lost a parent. But I really wasn't aware of anybody else. Now, that doesn't mean that there weren't other kids as I got older who did experience the loss of a parent, but I wasn't aware of it. And that is often the case when it comes to grief, is that, unless you've been directly told or experienced it, or, are somehow aware of this person's loss, you may not know that the people around you are going through a grieving process or missing somebody in their life. So my brother was pointing out that even to this day, as an adult, he doesn't know, many of his friends still have both of their parents. And so we, as adults, experienced the loss of one of our parents many, many years ago as children. He has grown up and lived with his friends, and most of them have not experienced the loss of a parent. And I know that I have several adult friends now who have experienced the loss of a parent at this point, but that isn't the case for everyone. So again, something to keep in mind if you have not experienced loss. We all know that death is something that eventually happens. We just hope that it's something that happens later in life. And even then, when it's later in life, when it's our grandparents, when it's people who are older, who, people we may expect to experience that at some point, it doesn't make it any easier, even when we expect something to happen. So, just wanted to give that a little bit of that perspective. And then I'm going to give you a few statistics, and then I want to jump into a little example. And it's not something I've clearly thought out, but I'm going to walk through some experiences people may have. So since it is the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, just be aware that the CDC has a lot of statistics, and they report that there are about 3,400 cases of SIDS, that's sudden infant death syndrome, each year. That's in the United States, so 3,400 estimated. And that stillbirths, and a stillbirth is considered a infant who has died in utero after 20 weeks gestation, and a miscarriage would be considered a child that has been has died in utero before 20 weeks of gestation. So a stillbirth affects 1 in 160 pregnancies, or about 24,000 pregnancies a year, or 70 a day in the United States. And 10 to 15% of pregnancies are lost annually. And this is just, of those last two statistics I gave, that's just what is known. So oftentimes women will go through a miscarriage and not report it, not talk about it, depending on, how early it was and whether they were able to manage those symptoms on their own. So oftentimes, that number may be low, especially if it happens earlier in a pregnancy. And I think those are the ones that I was able to find and just wanted to share today. So not extremely common, but also not rare that these things are happening to the people around you. So you probably know somebody who has experienced a miscarriage or multiple miscarriages, or the loss of a child. So keep that in mind when, you think about those experiences that they are going through when it comes to grief, and losing somebody they love. Okay, so when it comes to the loss of a child, there are many factors at play here. Some that maybe the general public, maybe you who's listening, don't consider. So when a person is grieving the loss of a baby via miscarriage or stillbirth, we may, that could fall under the topic of disenfranchised grief, which is basically the category of grief where your loss is not viewed as important because it's less publicly understood and accepted. So you've experienced a loss that people can't see. And so if you've experienced a loss people can't see, that may make it harder for them to understand. And other categories of that may be if you're the spouse of somebody who has had a miscarriage, right? You personally did not carry the child, but you are still experiencing that loss via your partner, your wife who has had the miscarriage. So when we think about grieving and loss, those are other aspects that we don't think about. Or the children of parents who have had a miscarriage, they maybe are aware that mom is pregnant and about to have a baby, and the mom doesn't have a baby. What is that like? That's an experience that we don't maybe often think about. And on this subject, there are many, many, many books out there that are available to read to children and for adults who are going through this grieving process. Or if you are maybe a classroom or therapy practice working with a bunch of children, there are activities and books that you can read to children to help them understand what maybe somebody else is going through in their classroom, a teacher, a friend, etc. So today I want to do a day in the life, and so I'm going to walk you through what might be somebody's experience. And just because I throw out some of these examples doesn't mean that this is something that every parent is going to go through, it doesn't mean that they're not going to go through these things. And it doesn't mean that you are wrong if you do or do not experience these things. So everybody's grief journey is different. It ebbs and flows. It comes in waves. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. Those are all completely normal. And I just want you to be aware of that. So, even when looking at your friends or your peers who may be going through any type of grief or loss, just because they're having a good day doesn't mean they are over it, or that they have accepted it and moved on. We all can move through grief and with grief, but grief is a process. Grief is a process, and it is one that is always ongoing for anybody. And what I've learned through this process, and what I hope to teach and hope my clients and hope you to learn, is that it is something you learn to live with and you carry with you and you factor into your life. And hopefully in doing so, that grief becomes easier. Okay, so without further ado, let's just imagine a day in the life of somebody who has lost a child, we'll say about a year old, around there. And so I'm going to try to keep my comments focused on that specific niche versus the numerous amounts of death and loss that other people can experience. So imagine waking up and you have experienced the death of your child, and normally your child would be maybe crying, and you would get up to get them, but you wake up and there's no crying. You have maybe slept past a normal time that your child would be waking up. That's just a reminder. That right there, that time is a reminder that your child isn't there to wake you up, for you to go into their room, to pick them up, to hold them, to change their diaper, to feed them. Any and all of those things would be triggers and reminders of your loss. If you're a breastfeeding mom or, a bottle feeding mom, just the act of feeding your child and not being there to feed them anymore can be a loss and another trigger. If, say, you are somebody who was, say this mom was breastfeeding and their child maybe recently died, they may still be producing milk, right? So what do I do with that? So I'm not only experiencing that loss of that child, but I'm also now experiencing physical symptoms where I have to decide, do I try to dry up my breast milk and producing? Do I try to continue to pump and maybe I want to give it to another child? Lots of decisions to be made, which then bring on additional feelings of, guilt and shame and sadness and, fill in the blank. So, even that act and making a decision, should I or shouldn't I do this one thing, breastfeed, pump milk, save milk, get rid of it, can be a traumatic reminder of the loss that they've experienced. Getting up and making the bed. I didn't used to be able to make the bed because I was always busy with my child. Now I can make the bed. Now I feel guilty. Taking a shower, for those people who have children, having time alone and space can be a rare occurrence. And when you have a child that maybe used to be there all the time and it was hard to work in, time to get a shower, time to go to the restroom on your own, and suddenly you can do that. Yet another reminder of the fact that that child is not there anymore, and you aren't being bothered by that. So when they were alive and you were experiencing that may have been a frustration, right? Like I don't have time to take a shower, to even wash my hair, to breathe. Now I do. And so we deal with those feelings of like guilt. I wish I hadn't felt that when they were here, because now they're not here, and I just wish so much to have that experience back. Maybe it's packing up and I go downstairs and I go into the kitchen and there, bam, refrigerator, maybe where I would have had their art that they made in daycare, and I see it and haven't taken it down. So that could be a positive reminder. It could bring sadness. It could bring both emotions. Or maybe you've taken it down because the reminder was too difficult right now. And so just the act of not seeing that art on the fridge that you knew used to be there is another reminder then that your child is not here with you anymore. It's another reminder that you aren't going to pack some snacks to take them to daycare, or make their bottles, or pack their diaper bag. It's a reminder that you're not going to put them in their car seat and snap them into place and get in the car and talk to them. These are, I'm so far just in the early waking hours of the morning, and we have had multiple triggers and reminders of the fact that your child is not there anymore. And so you can generalize this across any death or loss that you've experienced, and those constant reminders that you will face every day, all day long, and just trying to quote, get over or move on from that, why that can be so hard to do. And over time, those experiences do get easier, but especially initially, those things can be incredibly difficult. Folding laundry, seeing that laundry there that was your child's. Maybe you've washed all of it, and then you have that one outfit that you would wear that matched your child's outfit. Or there was that lone sock that got mixed in with your clothes, and everything you thought you had put away, you didn't, and there's that one more thing. Trying to decide, do I save these clothes or do I get rid of these clothes? Do I turn them into a type of memory blanket or quilt or animal? Or do I shove them away and keep them away for another child? Do I keep these clothes for a future child? Do I not keep these clothes? Do I give them to somebody I care about? Do I want them just out of sight, out of mind? There's no right or wrong answer for any of those decisions, but those are yet very hard decisions to make when you are grieving the loss of a child, again, or anyone. You go to work, and where normally, again, if I'm this breastfeeding mom, maybe I would be pumping for food for my child, and I, again, maybe no longer have to do that, or maybe I do. Or everybody's walking on eggshells around me, wondering if I'm okay, if they should say something or not say something. And you know it, and you can tell, and you can see that they're doing that, and you wish so much that they would just do X, Y, Z. This would be an opportunity for you to be able to advocate for yourself and the boundaries that you need and you want in your grieving process. I know that's hard. It can be very hard to do, and yet that gives other people permission to do whatever it is that you are wanting them to do, and to hopefully make it easier for you to feel like everybody's not walking on eggshells around you while you're trying to grieve. Needing to take breaks. Maybe it's just too much being at work. Maybe, even though it's been several months, it's still a lot of effort to be at work every day. And so working in breaks, you may have to do that. Reminders that you have, maybe pictures that you have in your office that you had on your computer or on your desk or in a file, right? You may decide to put those away. You may have them out. May or may not be difficult for you. When it's time to ready to leave work, maybe you would usually have to leave work at a certain time to go pick up your child from daycare. Well, you no longer have to do that. Again, yet another reminder that that is something you don't have to do, and that may be incredibly difficult. And you may feel guilty because you don't have to go pick up your child, or you maybe feel certain feelings because you're relieved that you don't have to go pick up your child. Having relief over certain things can bring up feelings. It's okay to feel relief. It's okay to feel happiness. It's okay to laugh. But even, your coworker or a friend making a joke and you laugh at it sometimes catches people when they're in, they're in their grief. And it's like, am I allowed to laugh? Am I allowed to feel good? Is that okay? Should I do that? And then now that I did, and I did enjoy it, and it was, it felt great. Do I feel guilty about that? Should I feel guilty about that? Am I allowed to move on? Am I allowed to feel happy? Yes, you are. You are allowed to feel happy. And hopefully those times will improve for you, and they will continue to happen more often for you. And it's okay to question that, but I don't want you to. I don't want you to question that. You're allowed to have any and all of those feelings. And now you go home and you make dinner, and you're not making dinner for your child. You're not tucking your child into bed. You're not having to do all the things you do after your child goes to bed because you couldn't get them done when they were awake. Or maybe they were a child that was up with you all night and would go to bed with you, and they're not in bed with you. these are the things that are happening for this parent grieving this loss. The constant daily reminders and things that you used to do with your child that you, again, no longer do. So I just want you to think about that. And that was a pretty simple explanation. And I probably missed all kinds of triggers and reminders. But if these are things that you don't think about on a daily basis, if you haven't experienced the loss of a child, these are things that you wouldn't really come to mind, and you wouldn't recognize as things that make it difficult for somebody to grieve. So today, I just hope that you could take away from today's podcast that the grieving process is unique. It has its ups and downs. There are numerous reminders and triggers to somebody's grieving process, and we just never know what those things are going to be. So take that for what you will, and I hope that you found this helpful in understanding grief for just this specific niche, and that we remember that it's Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month in October, along with all the other awareness topics that we have covered earlier in this month. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your month, and a happy Halloween coming up. If you celebrate Halloween, enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week for the next podcast.